Why do you think you bought it? Yeah, he just wants to use it.
Good morning. There's an epidemic sweeping the nation, yet no one is scared. There's a growing illness in America, yet it affects everyone differently. This epidemic is mental illness. Today, about 1 in every 5 Americans has some sort of mental health condition. It's about 40 million people. To put that in perspective, that's the populations of Pennsylvania and Florida combined. Today, I want to focus on 2 main areas of this issue. First, the rising case of Americans with mental illnesses, and second, the lack of treatment the mentally ill receive in the United States. First of all, I'd like to address the rising number of cases of mental illness in the United States over the past couple of years. For example, the number of children being diagnosed with mental illness is rising. In a study by Mental Health America, in 2011, there was about 8.5 young adults that were diagnosed with depression. But in 2014, there was about 11.1% of youth being diagnosed with depression. It's about more than 1 in every 10 young adults struggling with depression. On the other hand, the number of adults being diagnosed with mental illness is also rising. Today, about 1 in 5 adults in America struggle with some sort of mental illness. The National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, or NAMI for short, released rates of diagnosis for specific mental disorders in the United States. About 1 in every 100 Americans suffers from schizophrenia. 2.6% of American adults live with bipolar disorder. About 6.9% of adults in America live with major depression, and about 18.1%, which is about 42 million Americans, live with some sort of anxiety disorder. The consequences of the rising number of mental illness patients in America is staggering. About 26%, is that out of it? Okay. About 26% of the homeless adults living in homeless shelters have some sort of mental health issue. And approximately 24% of prison inmates suffer from or have suffered from some sort of mental health condition. Which segues me to my next point, the lack of treatment that the mentally ill are receiving in the United States. In the same article by NAMI, about 40% of the mentally ill in 2014 received treatment. That's 60% of the mentally ill that didn't receive any treatment whatsoever. And about half of the children with mental illness didn't receive any treatment. Most recent numbers from Mental Health America say about 56% of Americans, adults and children, did not receive any treatment whatsoever in the past year. However, there's also a shortage of mental health professionals in the United States. For example, there's about 1 mental health professional for every 1,000 people. That includes psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, social workers, and psychiatric nurses. And the less access these people have to treatment leads to higher rates of incarceration, especially with violent criminals not getting the treatment that they deserve. Which brings me to my final point, the treatment of the mentally ill and the rates of incarceration. Mother Jones, a foundation pushing for progress, stated that the mentally ill are 10 times more likely to be locked up in a jail than in a psychiatric hospital. It's due to mainly the violent crimes that they commit or the danger they pose to society. The numbers don't lie, however. In 2012, there's about 350,000 inmates with a severe mental disorder, but only 35,000 Americans with the same mental disorders were found in psychiatric hospitals. That's about 10 times more. In 44 different states, the number of mental health patients being incarcerated was greater than the number of mental health patients in the psychiatric hospitals. That's just terrible. In jail, the mentally ill are the most likely to be sexually assaulted and have the highest rates of suicide among any other inmates. All in all, the mentally ill in the United States do not receive the treatment that they deserve, whether it be lack of mental health professionals or the risk of being thrown in jail instead of going to a mental institution. In conclusion, the state of mental health in America is completely out of whack. On one hand, we have the rate of mental illness rising in America, but on the other hand, we have the treatment of mental illness falling. So it's creating a larger disparity for those who are mentally ill, and there needs to be a solution. Thank you.